Okay, we're gonna move on to the next part of the course. We're gonna click on, so last time we've reviewed the build of curriculum outline, and then we're gonna move on to the next part of the course, which is debugging Camperbot's profile page. So if you click on it, you're gonna get to this page, and it's to debug Camperbot's profile page. This is Camperbot's profile page, and then Camperbot is trying to build a profile page, and they asked a friend to look over their code, and they said it has some errors. So your job is to fix all Camperbot's errors so they can continue building their profile page. Complete the items in the user stories below and click run tests to see if you fixed all the errors. So the user stories are listed here, and number one, Camperbot is trying to use a heading 2 element, but that element does not exist. Fix those tags so it uses a correct second level heading element. We've learned that heading 2 is actually h2 rather than heading, so we're gonna fix that here, and it's fixed. Number two, Camperbot is trying to add 2 paragraphs with pp, but those don't exist either, and fix them so they use correct paragraph tag. So it uses pp, but we've learned that paragraph is just 1p, so we fix that. Number 3, Camperbot is trying an h3 element for the background and interests subheading, but it has a syntax error. Spot the issue and resolve it. So when you see h3 element here, you have the opening tag and a closing tag, but a closing tag looks a little bit different. We've learned that the closing tag has a slash in front, so we fix that, and that fixes all the error. So I'm gonna run these tests. It says here you should have the paragraph element with I enjoy solve puzzles. Here's an example p. Yeah, there's another p paragraph here, so I need to fix that one too. And you should have exactly 2 paragraph elements on the page. So you run the test again, and now you pass. So submit and go to the next challenge. And the next challenge is understanding HTML attributes. It's a theory part, so we're gonna click on it. And when I reviewed this material, I noticed that there is an interactive editor on the top right corner. Just click on it, and you'll see the interactive editor. It's better to have him when you're learning, so I recommend turning this on when you're reading this page. So what role does HTML play on the web? HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language, is a markup language for creating web pages. When you visit a website and see content like paragraphs, headings, links, images, and videos, that's HTML. And here is a small example using HTML elements. Try editing some of the text in the editor and see the changes update in the preview window. So as we practiced earlier, there's an editor part, and there is a one that shows the preview or the output. So if you put your HTML code here, it will display the result on the preview window. In a regular Chrome browser setting, it will be just a regular Chrome browser that displays the web page. Moving forward, HTML represents the content and structure of a web page through the use of elements. Most elements will have an opening tag and a closing tag. Sometimes those tags are referred to as start and end tags. In between those 2 tags, you will have the content. This content can be text or other HTML element. So here is another example of paragraph element, and change the text in the text editor to say I love coding and see the result in the preview window. So the mission is to change the text in between to I love coding. And that's it. It displays the text inside the P element. And when you move forward, there is a it says here both opening and closing tags start with a left angle bracket and end with the right angle bracket. We already know this, so I'm just gonna skip it over. So it looks like P element looks like this. Is there's an opening tag and a closing tag. What distinguishes an opening tag from closing tag is a forward slash, as we've noticed earlier that the slash is shown here, and that's the difference between the opening and a closing tag. And moving forward, and here's an example of an image element, which is void element, and it looks like this. And notice that this image element does not have the closing tag and it does not have any content. Void elements cannot have any content and only have a start tag. Sometimes you'll see void elements that uses slash before the closing bracket like this. And while many code formatters like Prettier will choose to include slash in void elements, HTML spec states that the presence of slash does not mark the start tag as self-closing, but instead is necessary and has no effect of any kind. I'm just skimming through the important part. Yes, so there's for now up until here, all you have to know is that there is a thing called void element that does not have the content, and it maybe looks like this or this. It's, to be honest, you don't have to memorize this. I will show you where to view this type of format later as a reference, so you could check the reference each time you use the void element, so you don't have to memorize. So therefore I'm going to move forward. Let's see. So it introduces the source attribute. So for the image element, instead of having the text in between, what it has is an attribute, and attribute basically looks like this. It has src attribute inside the image element, and as you can see, the source contains the URL of the picture file, and then it displays the text as an output. And it says here the source attributes is used to specify the location for that image. For image element, it's good practice to include another attribute called an ALT attribute. The ALT attribute is used to provide short descriptive text for the images. Here's an example of an image element with src and ALT attributes. Try breaking the image by updating the source value to this. So this is just a simple practice. So inside image element, there are two attributes, one source and one is ALT, right? And the mission is here is to change the source so that the picture changes to a different picture. So that's what I did. You will see the images disappear and only the ALT text show. So here there are a bunch of things. I'm just reading it over, and basically it's saying that HTML is basically building a content, and CSS is for style, and that's all you need to know for now. I think it will explain further later on how you use the attributes, but for now the information here, you could read it over and try to understand. I won't be reading everything. Moving forward, questions. What does HTML stands for? It says previously is a hypertext markup language. And which of the following is the correct syntax for a closing tag? As we've learned, the slash is in front of the p element. That's a closing tag, so I choose that. Which of the following is a value attribute used inside the image element? So as we've learned earlier, there's a value attribute called source. So you do that and you check and you move on to the next challenge. And this challenge, what are attributes and how do they work? So it explains further about attribute here, and I think it's worth reading. So an attribute is a value placed inside the opening tag of a HTML element, and attributes provide additional information about the element or specify how the element should behave. Here is basic syntax for an attribute. So this is the basic syntax of an attribute. It has an opening and a closing tag, and for the opening you can add attribute if you want, and most of the time there are certain attributes that we use often, and you can check that reference in an MDN website. I think it's good that I introduced that. It's called MDN Web Docs. If you click here, it shows it gives example of the HTML tags that you can use, and you can, like, for instance, if you want to know about, I don't know, let's see, image, right, that we learned. You notice that image has, source attribute, ALT attribute. Using this as a reference, you could use this on when you're developing a website. So I recommend using this page. So that is the reason that you don't have to memorize everything. You could just look at the reference and try copying and pasting the reference, try reading it over to gain better understanding, and as you use it often, you will memorize eventually, so you don't have to force yourself to memorize in the first place. So going back, the attribute name is followed by the equal sign, and the value can be a string or a number depending on the attribute. And the first example uses the href and target attributes. Href attribute specifies the URL of a link, and a target attribute specifies where to open the link. So we're gonna do a little activity here. So in the editor, we have this A element, and then A element has href attribute, and href attribute basically specify where the link is going. So the URL of a link where the user is going to get into once they click the link, right? So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna change the href from this to this. I'm just gonna copy and paste. So you do that. When you click the link on the website, it will actually go to this page, this URL, as you can see here, rather than this URL. So that's what I've changed. You don't have to know too much. We're gonna use this often moving forward. Without the href attribute, the link would not work because there would have no destination URL. So you must include this href attribute to make the link functional, and the target blank enables the link to open in a new browser tab. And you will learn more about target attribute in a future lesson. So if you have this target equals this underscore and blank, basically it forces the user to open this new link on a new tab, and it's very useful because if you don't include that, what's gonna happen is that it's gonna basically change this page currently that I'm in to a different page, right? And then it will distract the user because they will need to press like this back button to go back to the old content. So usually it's better to have this target equals underscore blank so that the user would have it on a new page, and if they don't like the content that they see, they can just close it and go back to the old content. And that is a reason. And other common attributes are source and ALT, alternative an attribute which is used to specify the source of an image and provide alternative descriptive text for the image. So when you're playing around with the image element, so image element basically displays the picture from the source, right? The source contains the JPG file, which is a picture file. So it's basically getting that picture and display on the website. And here is using the link right here. But then what we're trying to do is to change this cat picture into a different cat picture by providing another source link or source URL, and it changes the pictures like this. And that's what you're doing. And then since we changed the picture, we changed the ALT attribute because ALT is usually there to explain what the picture is doing. And now the picture changed, since the picture changed to 2 cats running in the dirt, we changed the ALT attribute as well as 2 cats running in the dirt. And moving forward, similar to the href attribute, the source attribute is required because it specifies the image file to be displayed. ALT attribute is not required, but it is recommended for accessibility purposes. And accessibility means making sure that everyone, including those with disabilities, can use and understand things like website, apps, and physical spaces. You will learn more about accessibility in the upcoming lesson. So basically, this ALT attribute, which we put right here, is not required, but it is recommended because you want to it basically helps people with disabilities to read the website. And we're gonna learn more on that. And some attributes are a little unique with their syntax, like checked attribute. And you don't have to memorize, it's just giving example. It's just giving a bunch of examples and ideas, but you don't have to memorize again. So enable the interactive editor, which we already did here. So this input element is introduced, and an input element has a type and is a checkbox, and you have choice to make it into a checked, which means, it's a checked attribute. If you put this in, it will mark as checked from the start. If you don't mark it, basically it doesn't have any marks. So that is used. Again, you don't have to memorize that. I'm just gonna move forward. In the following example, we have an input element with type attribute set to checkbox. Inputs are used to collect data from users, and the type attribute specifies the type of input. In this case, this input is a checkbox. You'll learn more about it. So I'm just gonna skip this part because we are just giving examples of more attributes, and you don't have to memorize these. I'm gonna move forward. And as you can see, there's another concept called Boolean attributes. So Boolean attributes, it's right here. In HTML, there's disabled, read-only, and required attributes. They are called common Boolean attributes. And these attributes are used to specify the state of an element, such as whether it is disabled, read-only, or required. So below there is an example shown, and the example is input element that is disabled by default. Enable the interactive editor and try clicking on the input element in the preview window. Now remove the disabled attribute on the input element, and you will see the input is no longer disabled by default. You will now be able to click on it and type inside the field. So When it's disabled, you're not able to type any text in the text box, but then if you remove that disabled attribute, you are able to type inside a text box. So here's just an example of how, Boolean attribute is used to disable something. And I will explain further on this. I don't think it's a good example, so I'll just move forward. Let's see. So basically just know that there are many HTML attributes that you can use to manipulate the nature of HTML elements, and that's all you need to know for this theory document. And we're going to move forward to the questions. Which of the following is an example of a Boolean attribute? As we've learned earlier, we use disabled, so we're just going to click on disable. What is the role of an element? What is the role of an attribute in HTML? And attribute provides additional information and help define the behavior for HTML elements. You can say that. Which of the following is the correct syntax for a Boolean attribute? As we've done earlier, we've kind of played around with input element, and input element had a type attribute, and it had Boolean attribute called checked, and we just made it as it is. So I'm just going to click on that and check the answer and move forward. And I'm just going to wait until the advertisement is gone, but probably I'll stop the video now because we've just went over the theory document, and it has a lot of texts and ideas that you need to review and understand. But for now, what I'm saying is that even if you don't understand 100%, it's okay, because it is just a introduction of idea. Once the idea is introduced, it will come up again in later courses, and once it comes up, I'll try to be more clear in explaining those concepts, so you don't have to know everything thoroughly. So I'm gonna stop the video now. Thank you, and please subscribe if you want to learn more about coding. Thank you.